Good morning, my YouTube channel, my Facebook, Reel, TikTok. My name is David Jensen, Jensen. But my name for my online, my YouTube channel, and is David, your Steven Seagal lookalike, one and only Valparaiso. The title is the story of my life. Okay. It started a long time ago. I have a disability. Okay, I have Tourette's syndrome. It's actually a nerve disorder. There are some people that would play like they have Tourette's, but you know, it's not real. It doesn't get that bad. I mean, I make little noises. I mimic people and stuff like that. I've been to a lot of doctors and stuff like this. Well, see, a long time ago, back in the late '60s and early '70s, okay, a lot of the schools and stuff like that did not understand what Tourette's was around that time, and they would send me to all these different doctors, and they would do they put wires on my head, and I guess it's called EKG or something like that. I don't know. Maybe I could be wrong, you know. But I've seen a lot of doctors in the past, especially around the Edgewater side and stuff like this. And I was put in special schools at that time. It was kids with disabilities and stuff like that. And I was one of those kids, you know, growing up. I had problems in school. I used to get, I was heavy. I was overweight. I used to get picked on by bullies, and they used to beat up on me and stuff like that. And basically, I got put out of school, you know. Later on in life, you know, because back as a kid, I used to hang around at this one place called the American Indian Center. It used to be located over on Lawrence and Sheridan Road, you know, at the time, you know. That's before they got into that big building. It was called the Native American Center over there on was it Division, I think? No, Irving Park in California. They have a really big place over there, and that's where they have the Sundance, powwows, and food, and education, and what have you not, you know. And they represent all the Native Americans in the United States. So, growing up in my life, you know, with my parents, my mother and father, his name is Elof Jensen and Sue Jensen. Okay, so basically that's where my name came, David Jensen. Okay, my father was from Denmark. My mother was from Japan. Well, later on that era, I think I was like 7, 8 years old. My father had a friend that he knew during the war. It was during the Korean War, I guess, and he met a guy out there in the war, in World War II, I believe. His name was George. Okay, you know, Private Perry. You know, so George Perry was his name. I guess my father may have saved his life at one point in time, and he was saying to my father if there's any favors that he could do for me. And my father was worried about me because I always had problems in school because of my Tourette's and I was overweight. So he asked George if he would become my godfather. Okay. His name was George Perry Sr. I was surprised to see him after a lot of years went by, because I used to know there's one girl, her name was Melody Micas, and Melody, her mother was named Bella, and George was seeing Bella, you know. I was surprised he didn't recognize me, and I'm surprised, and then it dawned on me, hey, that's George Perry Sr., okay? So before he came to be my godfather, I had to get rebaptized. So, I mean, as a kid, I was baptized under the Greek Orthodox, okay, in downtown. And after I got baptized, George Perry Sr. was my godfather back in the day, and he was Greek, okay? He owned a restaurant in Greektown. It was called Roditi's. I'm pretty sure a lot of people heard of Roditi's restaurant in Chicago, and that was my godfather's restaurant. I remember as a kid, a young boy, working at Roditi's as a busboy, and it was fun, I knew a lot of people. I never learned how to speak Greek, okay? But the fact is, I was his godson, Well, later on those years, I called the restaurant and found out, the restaurant closed up. It's not there anymore. I mean, it's there, but this the empty store, George Perry Sr. passed away. It hurt me because I would figure the families would have gotten a hold of me and said, hey, your godfather passed away. And it really hurt me, I didn't even mention it to Bella. I didn't know at the time that they knew each other, So around that time, when I was about 16 or 17, I asked my godfather, because I had some friends who used to work for the city, city of Chicago, construction, laborers, street cleaners, garbage people, and stuff like that. So I asked George, hey, I really want this job working for the city. A friend of mine works for the water department, so I wanted to work for the water department, because a lot of my friends were working for the city. So I pleaded with my godfather, I asked him, can you please talk to somebody? Because he knew a lot of people. He knew a lot of business people. So he made a phone call. He called the Teamsters Union in Chicago. It used to be it's probably still there on Halsted Street, and asked for a favor. I guess the one of the big chiefs over there at the Teamsters Union, and the guy made a phone call and called City Hall and talked to, I guess, Richard Daley, at the time, And next thing I know, I started a week later. Got the job. Was working at the water department. Had a city official ID, okay? I was getting paychecks, and I was making good money, And I was working overtime. Top that off, I knew a lot of Greek people at the time, and I knew this another guy, another George, and John and what have you not, and his family, because we used to hang out together. We were kids growing up, in my teenage days and in my early 20s. His name was George, and his family owned a lot of restaurants up in Chicago. It was called the Golden Nugget Restaurant. And I'm pretty sure people out there have heard of the Golden Nugget. Okay? And I started working, nighttime, working with George, washing dishes or helping around the kitchen. George and I were good friends, We did a lot of things. He had a restaurant. It was called... I can't think. It's right there on the corner of North Avenue and Ashland. Oh, the Hollywood Grill. Okay. He had another restaurant. It was called the Golden Apple Restaurant. It was over by Sheffield and Belmont, I think. Belmont, Sheffield, or something. Anyway, it was called the Golden Apple. Okay. And oh man, I used to go to the Pancake House because I used to walk around with my pool stick. I would go to the pool hall and shoot pool and stuff like that. And I was really good at the game, Back in the day, they used to call me Little David, you know, because I used to run, maybe about 42 racks of balls like ain't nothing, you know, because I used to practice as a kid, you know, growing up, because I found pool to be fascinated, you know. I was playing 15 ball. In other words, I would go from 1 to 15 in rotation and be run rack after rack after rack. And I noticed I was at a pool hall a long time ago called Benzinger's Billiards. It was over there by Broadway and Diversity back in the day. And I used to go in an exhibition room and practice and practice and practice. And I noticed all these people looking at me, you know, fascinated of how I'm shooting, because it's like I got total control of the cue ball. I can imagine where the cue ball is going to go, and that's where it's going to go. And I would do it on rotation. And how I got so good at that was I used to play this game called snooker. It was on a 12 by 60, 12 by 15 table. No, 12 by 9, 12, something like that. Anyway, I used to run 15 balls off a snooker table. And I remember this one guy, his name was Bugs Duran, and Bugs was a bank player. You know, he liked to shoot banks. And Arlie was a one-pocket player, and then Mexican Johnny liked to play 8-ball, and then Kenny, he was a straight pool player, and I met this one guy who was watching me. His name was Billy Cardone. Billy Cardone was fascinated, and him and I used to play together back in the day, and of course I used to whip him all the time, you know. I mean, he was a good player now. But, I mean, he was a gambler, man. He was a hustler. But me, I wasn't one of those people who put my money on the table and say, yeah, I'll play you $5 a game or $10 a game or $20 a game. And then I met his friend. He came out of the woodwork. We came to be really good friends. His name was Steven Miserak. Then I met this other guy. His name was Paul Gurney. He was a trick shot artist out in Vegas. But anyway, to make a long story short, when I was 17, my father and mother were going to retire, and they were going to sell the house and move down to Florida. Okay. About a week before they moved, I overheard them saying, "Should we tell David the truth?" You know, I couldn't understand what they were talking about, me or what have you not. But they told me about 3 or 4 days before they left down to Florida that I was adopted. And it kind of threw me off, because I was, you know, I mean, I've been with my parents all my life, since I can remember, you know. Damn, since I was born, as far as I know, you know, as a kid growing up, you know, that was my mother, you know. Because we used to live over there in Chicago. I remember my father had this building he owned, and it was called Bizzle Street, okay? I mean, that's the only thing I know, you know. I mean, to go back even further than that, it would be impossible, you know, for me to go back that far back. So I talked to one of my mom's girlfriends. They kind of grew up together. They knew each other in Japan, and she was working. My mother was working at Benihana of Tokyo in Chicago, and my mother's friend was named Yuko. Okay, and I went up to Yuko, and I talked to her, and I asked her, "Yuko, how many kids did my mother have?" Well, according to Yuko, because they're close friends, my mother only had 2 kids. Okay. The first child that she had was in Japan, because I got a picture of him. You know, a picture of him and my mother. I guess they were both at the zoo. The second child that was born was my brother. Okay, Thomas Jensen. Okay. And then when I was looking at the birth certificate, it shows my mother and father as Mr. and Mrs. Johnson. But the thing of what I don't understand, if my mother only had 2 kids, where did I come from? You know? So it kind of like verified what everybody Yuko was telling me, that she only had 2 kids, because the first child that was born was in Japan. He died. Okay, the second child was my brother. But at that time, I was already with my family. Okay, you know, so I mean, it's all confusion and stuff like that. You know, I guess back in the day, you could put your name on a dotted line, become someone's father, or you could maybe manipulate the birth certificate somehow, or maybe the DNA. I don't know. You know, I don't have the greatest idea. You know, I don't know what happened back in the 50s or early 60s as far as that goes. So I did some research on myself, and I remember Hugo telling me about Addison and Foster. It's a adoption agency out there where supposing where I came from. You know, as far as I know, that's where I came from an adoption agency. I went there and I told them, please check. You know, they wasn't too sure they have all these records and stuff like this, and they did run across a name. Okay, I don't know if that place is there anymore or not, but they found out that I was adopted back in 1958. Okay, from a Mr. and Mrs. Jensen. The people who dropped me off was two kids as a child, and they were Native American. I guess they were also from South Dakota. So that means I'm a Sioux, you know. I figure maybe Lakota, you know. Well, I mean, you know, Pine Ridge, I mean, South Dakota's got 5 or 6 reservations out there, so which one do I go to? Who do I find out? I found out later that my father's last name was Whitehorse, my biological father. Not that I, you know, I look at that and you know, I don't know these people out of Adams. I only know my mother and father who raised me. That's my parents, you know. So I asked my brother about it. He said he had no recollection or any idea. He said he was not adopted, you know. So who do I believe? My brother, or Hugo, who was my mother's best friend, you know. And then of course my parents told me when I was 17 that I was adopted because they didn't want me to find out later on in life, you know, and you know I'd probably go crazy or something like that. So. So later on in that time, you know, you know, I've always had a hard time, you know, because of my Tourette's, and I did lose a lot of weight. My father at that time sent me off to a place called the Seventh-day Adventist, and I kind of grew up there. They're Christian people, and they helped me lose weight. I used to run and exercise and do sit-ups and push-ups, and I got really strong. Okay, I came back from Pullman, Michigan when I was about 17. Okay, and I met Sifu Kwan, who was my martial arts instructor and stuff like this. I took martial arts. At that time, it was called the 7 Steps of Praying Mantis, the 7-star Praying Mantis School. So I learned Kung Fu, you know, Chinese martial arts. It was in Chinatown over on Argyle Street. But you know, I've always had a conscience, you know, a bad conscience, you know, because I see all my friends, they got girlfriends and stuff like this, and I was shy, you know, I was afraid to talk to girls, you know, at that time because of rejections, you know, because of, I don't know if it was because of how I looked or something like this, or because I was Native American. I wasn't too sure, you know. I mean, I knew I was Native, you know, at that time, and then, you know, my mother and father was Danish and Japanese, so it got me really all messed up in the head, you know. I did break down and cry sometimes, and because it hurts, you know, to know who are you, you know. Hugo tells me that my mother only had 2 kids in her life. Where did I come from? Was I born without a father's, you know, was I a miracle baby? I don't know. You know, because I'm looking at all these baby pictures and stuff. But all these other people, I don't know who they are. My brother does probably. Family pictures and what have you not. And as far as I know, that was my mother and father. So anyway, later on that line, going, talking to girls, working at a job. I've been used. I've been cheated on. Girls will go out with me, but then they'd be cheating on me. One day I remember I had a place, and I came home one day from my job. I was tired. I wanted to spend time with my woman and stuff like that. And when I came into that door, I walked into the bedroom. There was another guy on top of her, and it threw me off left field. I didn't get mad. I told the guy, "Look, you're on top of my girlfriend. I'll tell you what. You go ahead and keep busy what you're doing. I'm packing my stuff. I'm moving out here. You guys can have this place. You pay the rent. You pay her bills. You pay her car. You pay her credit cards. I'm out of here." And as soon as I got out the door with my clothes, she comes out half butt naked, runs out the door, and told me, "David, it did not mean anything." What does that mean? It didn't mean nothing. The guy was on top of you and it did not mean anything. Really? And you're my girlfriend? See you. Bye. Don't want to know you. So later on in that life, I met this other woman, and I was in my my late 20s, and her name was Miranda Anderson. We hit it off so good together and stuff like this, and a year later or 2 years later, she I told her, well, maybe if you're having a hard time, why don't you come stay with me? We can live together. She said, "Oh no, I'm not living with a man. A woman should always have her own, And she said that I'm not gonna move in with a man unless you put a ring on his finger. So I told her, "Look, you love me?" And she said, "Yes, I love you. Marry me." I wanted to become her husband. So that year, we got married. First year was awesome. Second year, awesome. Third year, awesome. 10 years went by, married, and looking at her was like the first time we met. It was all love and loyalty, and trust. It was very good, and then I met the family. I met James and her brother-in-law, and I met so many people through her family, and I was part of that family. And I was married for 35 years. Okay. Well, she got sick maybe 10 years before then. She back in 2006 or 2007 found out that I'm sorry, maybe later on in that because we were living at Colonial Courts apartments at that time, and so I will say about 2012 she found out that she went into the hospital and they told her, "Mrs. Anderson, you have leukemia, AML leukemia." So she's been fighting a battle with cancer, and I was with her every step of the way, taking care of her. Sometimes I had to put a diaper on her. I had to, feed her. I had to make food and stuff like that, because she taught me a lot now. She taught me how to cook the stuff that she likes, not the stuff I like. So I learned quite a bit from her. It was love, and that one day back in 2020, she got sick, okay? And she went into the hospital. They found that she had COVID. On January 25th, I got a call from the hospital that she passed away. that took my whole life. It turned my life upside down. Because it was so long, you know, it's so hard trying to find someone to be in my life and to share moments together and share a life together, going out, having fun, enjoying each other. It took so long. When she passed away, a friend of mine was staying with us at the time. He was helping me with Miranda and stuff like this, and I couldn't deal with life anymore. I was tired, you know. I lost the only woman that I loved the most, you know, my wife. And then, of course, it was 5-6 months down the road later on, maybe more, 9 months. But I remember in June in 2020, my wife was still alive at the time, and I came to not the Family Dollar, I came to the cigarette store, believe it or not, over their smoke shop, you know, and I saw this woman. She asked me, hey, are you Native American? You know, I told her I am. I told her I was a Lakota. And when she asked me if she could hug me, I hugged her, and the only thing I felt was something I never felt since my wife passed away. Her heart. Good vibes. Now, my wife has always told me back in the day, when she had cancer, when she was fighting cancer, she told me, David, if something ever happens to me, if something ever happens to you, I don't want you to be alone. I don't want you to be blaming yourself or something like that. And he wanted me to find a good woman, and I did find a good woman. I mean, I still grieve. Okay, I'm always gonna grieve. It's a lifetime grief. I look at storage. And that's why I make my videos mostly as storage. And what hurts me the most is, okay, when you work 30 years for the sanitation department, they were taking money out for pension and stuff like that. Well, guess what? I called up the sanitation department. I called City Hall and say, hey, my name is David Jensen. I don't have my ID. I can't even find any of my check stubs. I never received pension. I mean, 30 years of dedication with work. And they tell me that they have no knowledge of me ever being working for the city. So, but anyway, I'm going to get going. I see a friend of mine showing up right now. I don't want to be disturbed making videos, and I don't know. But anyway, I just wanted to let you know the story of my life. So anyway, I'll talk to everyone later. Everyone have a good night and God bless. I mean, if I was getting my pension and stuff like this, I wouldn't, be living in an apartment. I'd be living in a home, in a house or something like this. I'd be doing good, my girlfriend and I were talking last night. She was talking about that, having a home and stuff like that, and that's great. If providing I was still getting, if I was getting my pension, I don't know, it's a lot of problems, But hey, I make it by, That's what I do. I make it by, But anyway, I'm gonna get going. YouTube, my Facebook, my TikTok. I just want everyone to know the story of my life. This is David, your one and only Steven Seagal lookalike, one and only Valparaiso. I'll talk to everyone later. Peace.